So back in February, Trump started talking about Canada becoming the 51st state of America, and this really rankled a lot of people. It got a lot of people's backs up, especially in Canada. And everyone, I think, thought Trump was trolling, but I actually don't think Trump is trolling here. I actually think that he would like to add Canada to the United States as the 51st state. And there's a kind of world historic reason for it, I think. I think he probably is trying to secure the future of the American Republic in a geopolitical sense, as in, I think that he is under the impression that the Arctic will become strategically a lot more important in the future than it already is, which is why he wants Greenland as well as the Panama Canal, which I think he's worried about the geopolitical position of America with the rise of China, and less so the rise of Russia, although I'm not convinced Russia is actually rising. But the Chinese are definitely a concern. And so I think he wants to fortify the United States. And I think the way that he thinks that's done best is by making sure that America has very secure control over the North American continent and the Arctic. And so I think that he wants Canada to become the 51st state. And I think there's also a kind of historic destiny in it. I think for him, not that there's like just in the stars or something. I think that he would like to have his name as being one of those presidents who expanded the territorial borders and thus the territorial greatness of the United States. And just to be clear, lots of people do not want this. I mean, this is why Pierre Poilievre lost his seat and Carney is now the Prime Minister of Canada. As you can see here, it was boomers who decided that dealing with Donald Trump was more important than making Canada a better place to live, or reducing the cost of living, or growing the economy, or improving the healthcare system, or doing anything else. It was attacking Trump that was the most important. And it does seem that Trump himself is responsible for Carney now being the Prime Minister. And thing is, Poilievre's message was really well received amongst young people whose primary concerns, as you can see, reducing the cost of living, making housing more affordable, growing the economy, making Canada a better place to live. As in, people with a future in Canada were like, okay, but I would actually like this to be good. I'd like this to be a decent place to live. And they are far less, I mean, they were just not bothered about Donald Trump's trolling, because that's what this came across as, even though I don't think this is trolling. And this is something that people in the BBC and very commentators have noticed. Like, look, this is just kind of wild that this has become a boomer brainworm. And this really, I mean, this boomer summarized it completely. It's like, yeah, I'm voting Liberal because F Trump, have the finger. And okay, well, great. But what does it look like to live in Canada as a young person now? How many Canadian young people move to America just out of interest? I bet it's a lot. How do the boomers care? No, of course they don't care. Anyway, Mark Carney said that they were going to deal with Trump on their terms, which is, honestly, it's a really optimistic thing to say. Canada's got, like 35 million people and the longest land border in the world with the United States, which is the greatest military power in the world. I mean, you can talk tough, but everyone knows that if push came to shove, you'd be in a lot of trouble, and actually this wouldn't be the case. And so Mark is like, okay, but I'm going to rely on the legal framework. And it's like, okay, but does Donald Trump care about the legal framework? Who underwrites the international legal framework? And the answer is the United States. And so what are you going to do, Canada? But the point that I'm trying to make here is not that Donald Trump is going to invade Canada. I don't think he is going to invade Canada. He kind of said as much here. It's like, look, I don't see using military force of Canada. For some reason, he thinks it's going to happen. It might happen with Greenland, which I don't think he's going to do that either. I think it's more likely he'll use military force in the Panama Canal to take it off the Chinese, which actually, if you think about it, no one's on the other side of that. And so I think that Trump could have had a much stronger diplomatic win by just asserting that and then offering closer trade ties and whatnot with Canada. I mean, really what Trump would want to do is something like the EU. in the way that the EU is working with its constituent countries and demanding sort of free movement, right? If allow Canadians to move to America, allow Americans to move to Canada, and instead of putting the backs up on the Canadians and getting them going, no, screw you, you would have actually a much more persuasive way of integrating the two countries and blurring the boundaries between America and Canada. If you did want to take over Canada, that is, you would have a much more blurred boundary between the countries. And in a generation or two's time, it wouldn't be evident why Canada was a sovereign country anyway. Why isn't Canada a 51st state? There are so many Americans here. There are so many Canadians in America, blah, blah, blah. But instead, what they've done is got the boomers out, in force. No, we hate Donald Trump. We're going to give you the finger. We're going to fight for everything. So, okay, fine, whatever. Whatever. But like I said, I don't particularly see annexing Canada as a good thing anyway, because it's full of boomer libs. Why would you want Canada, just out of interest? If in the American electoral system, why would you want to just add more blue states? What good does that do? I don't really understand. And the question of why Trump wants Canada is really interesting thing. See, he doesn't really explain it properly. He just acts as if this is a kind of inevitability. And as a negotiating tactic, that's actually quite strong. But it's not really clear why he wants Canada, because Canada's got lots of natural resources, but so does America. America could be completely self-sustaining, basically, if it wanted to be, at least in the major ways that matter. And, I mean, what does he need from Canada? It's just not clear what he's after from Canada, unless it is geostrategic. And even then, I mean, Canada has been such a close and lasting ally of America for the last 200 years that it seems strange to think that in the event of international issues with China, Canada wouldn't just be completely on America's side anyway. But I mean, I suppose there is a worry there, because Trudeau has been a bit too friendly to China recently, I suppose. Anyway, so it looks like they're probably not going to invade, but I genuinely think that this is what's on Donald Trump's mind. I genuinely think that actually what he's thinking is Imperium, which is interesting, because one of the concerns that they have with Donald Trump, and I've made this point in other videos, is that Donald Trump thinks like Thomas Carlyle's Great Men of History. He thinks history is made by great men making big decisions. And he is, in this way, much more like Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping than he is some sort of European bureaucrat, right? Like a Mark Carney or an Ursula von der Leyen or a Justin Trudeau or Jacinda Ardern, the WEF types. He's much more in the mold of the person in charge gets to take executive action for the good of the country and to expand the borders, frankly. And this is the way his mind works. And I imagine from him being a businessman, but it also seems to be just his natural temperament. And so it looks like this is what he's after. And I mean, there are definitely positives and negatives in this. Future historians will look at this as the sort of end of the breakdown of the American Republic, in the same way that Rome's conquests and expansions around the sort of 2nd century leading to the 1st century showed that it was evident that the Roman Republic was breaking down. Right? Once Carthage and Corinth had been destroyed in 146 BC, and then leading into the 1st century BC, where you have the civil wars and the expansions of Pompey in the east, Caesar in Gaul, you can see that basically the Republic is all but over at this point. And it is really the Roman Empire that we are talking about, and we are watching it being wet-nursed into existence by the Triumvirate and Julius Caesar. And I mean, it seems that this is kind of what Trump is doing here, whether Trump realizes it or not, right? Republics have a shelf life. Republics aren't like monarchies. Monarchies last forever. Genuinely, and I really mean this, monarchy is the most stable form of government humankind has ever known. Having a king or an emperor or whatever it is in charge, and these can last for literally thousands of years. So, I mean, at the moment, King Charles is a direct descendant of Harold Godwinson and William the Conqueror, the two people who were opposing each other at the Battle of Hastings. So monarchy can last a very, very long time. Republics are naturally more unstable because they unleash the productive and competitive forces of a people, making it so that, the top spot's available, which allows those people who are competitive to start really pushing the boundaries. But that means that someone wins in this game eventually, and republics have a shelf life. And when republics fall, it doesn't mean that the civilization is over or that its power collapses or anything. What it means is that the political system is over and you transition into something that more resembles a monarchy. The Roman Empire is a great example of this, but there are many others as well. I mean, look at Napoleon with France. There are many others like this, and so the end of the end of the American Republic could well be on the horizon, but it's not going to be tomorrow. It's more likely to be in like 100 years' time, where historians look back at Trump's talk of taking these things, and who knows what happens like in like a generation's time or something. And eventually, these things kind of get historically amalgamated into one another, even if they didn't want it or were resistant to it. And this is actually what the BBC correspondent was sort of talking about on their coverage of this. Because I was watching this earlier, and they were just like, "Well, I mean, in fact, I'll play it for you."
I think it's still unlikely. Expanding the U.S. territory, that it would be a historic accomplishment, one that when people look at Canada or Greenland as part of the United States could say, well, Donald Trump did that, his own monument, kind of a geographic monument to his presidency. While it may not be likely that tanks will roll across the border into Canada, they do have to take American designs on Canadian territories.
So you can see what he's saying there. Like that would be a historic monument to Donald Trump, and I think Trump thinks much more in those terms than he does in the concerns for the resources or anything like this. But I think he is also worried about the geostrategic position of the United States with regards to Canada and Russia. So yeah, I don't think it's likely that Trump is going to do anything. I don't think he's going to get Canada as the 51st state or anything like that. But I think that what this signals is that the republic itself is in distress. And I mean, we've seen this over the past few years with the American Republic being heavily polarized. And the Democrats, I mean, remember when Trump was in, I think it was his inaugural address, or his State of the Union or something like that, where he was just saying, look, there's nothing I can say that the Democrats will agree with, that they'll come over to my side and say, yeah, okay, fair enough, you're right on this, we'll support you on this. There's nothing I can say. And that level of political polarization is not going to be resolved diplomatically. The Democrats would have to kind of admit that they were wrong and the Republicans were right about the nature of what the future of the United States should look like. Should it be pro-American or anti-American, basically, is what it boils down to. And this kind of thing, it's like a spinning top. When it starts going off, when it's spinning, when it's got a lot of energy in it, and it spins and it holds itself up. But when the energy starts coming out of it and it falls over and knocks and crashes everywhere, that's kind of what the political system's like. And with faith and trust in the system that gives it legitimacy, which is like a kind of magic that holds the thing up. And I think that what we're seeing here is the magic of the Republic unwinding and unraveling. And so it will naturally, in the course of 100 or 200 years, transition into something else. Because I mean, when we're talking historically about the fall of the Roman Republic, that is a process that lasts for over 100 years. So it's a long time that this stuff takes, usually. And I don't see why America as a republic would be any different. I don't see why we'd look at that and say, oh no, this is going to be an exception. There's no reason to think that this is going to be an exception. And this, I think, might be what's on Donald Trump's mind.